Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dream Data.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dream Data employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. Hello and welcome everybody to today's live session brought to you by us here at Dream Data. I'm Stefan. I'm the CMO of Dream Data, and I'm quite excited today to talk with someone who knows more about this topic today than I do, because Natalie Furness is let's call her a RevOps expert, and I am definitely not a RevOps expert, but she has a very promising pitch for us today, which is to scale our revenue without headcount. And I think that's an aspiration a lot of us that runs companies really desire, but actually doing is hard, and it's hard to get out of this kind of hiring people to solve problems cycle. Natalie has built a very successful RevOps company called RevOps Automated, and Natalie, maybe you can just kind of take it from here and like explain your kind of how did you get into RevOps, what's your background, and then what is like the day-to-day tasks of RevOps Automated.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for having me here today. So lovely to meet all of you. My name is Natalie. I am the CEO and founder of RevOps Automated. We are all about building technology that works for people so that we can help businesses improve their team's productivity, performance, and ultimately that profitability that we're talking about. We do that through leveraging the latest technologies. So we're doing a lot of AI implementation now, but we also are still implementing CRMs before businesses that have too many spreadsheets. We're putting in platforms like Dream Data and all other sorts of reporting tools to allow people to make better decisions about where they spend their money. Because, of course, if you can spend your money in places that are going to develop more profits, you don't need as many people in terms of headcount. In terms of how I got into RevOps, I think if you speak to any RevOps person, we always have a completely different story. So, like, I've always kind of looked backwards and thought, like, how did I get here? And actually, I'm one of those people that's been blessed with having a lot of different experiences. So I was working in sales really from a very young age. I worked in retail. I had a first sales job at university. I sold mobile phones like on the streets. Like I was a charity door knocker when I traveled. So I got to experience what selling felt like from a very empathetic point of view. I then moved into clinical operations. I actually studied a degree in neurophysiology and biomechanics and worked in the clinical side. I became obsessed with the patient's experience of healthcare and how the processes and systems changed their experience of healthcare. And actually after that, I ended up going into marketing for a brief period of time, marketing for health tech companies and setting up the marketing operations, more on the communication side, sharing the kind of values and visions of health tech because I knew a lot about it. And it was actually, I think, the consolidation of all these experiences that led me to kind of think, like, actually, the thing that I enjoy the most is making the technology work for the sales team, work for the marketing team, work for the CEO. And I remember it was during lockdown, and it was just that first lift where we were allowed to travel. And I went to Paris to meet some people I made friends with on Twitter. And it was that moment that I like reflected on, like, what does Natalie really love? And it was really that bridging the gap between those departments and helping the employees perform better. Because if you look after your employees look after your customers. And I do that through revenue operations. So yeah, that's my story.
That's a really good story, Natalie. Maybe if there's just people that haven't really connected too much with the RevOps people, maybe we could do a little kind of digging into kind of what are typically the processes. You said it a little bit, but what are typically the processes of that RevOps handles for companies? And after that, what typically makes a good RevOps person?
Yeah, so this is a challenging one because still today, not every business has a revenue operations function.
No.
Now, if you are a marketer or a salesperson and you're sitting there and you're like, well, I've got an admin for my HubSpot or an admin for my Salesforce, they're RevOps, right?
Mm.
Not quite. So I like to see revenue operations as a business function. So it's like saying, my marketing person, we know marketing is a business function, the same way sales is a business. Today, because we have so many technologies and tools, revenue operations become a function. And the function of revenue operations is to listen to all the departments and to the C-suite and understand, how do we architect a infrastructure that aligns marketing and sales and onboarding. We can report on what's happening so we can make better decisions on how to optimize those departments. Now, that's at a strategic point of view. And a lot of you may not necessarily have direct communication with that person in RevOps if you have a RevOps director. What you will see day to day in your RevOps team is perhaps a RevOps analyst who does ticket management. So we have two functions of RevOps, the strategic and the tactical. The tactical RevOps people, perhaps you'll talk to them about helping you solve your marketing attribution. So how do you make sure that you're tracking all of those touch points so you can attribute marketing revenue? You'll talk to them about, how do we optimize speed to lead? So when someone fills out a form, how do we make sure that it's scored correctly and we have the right salesperson addressing it? And one of the things I think a big people miss out on is the close lost analysis. We've done this for a few companies. I love it. And marketers love it when they get the information. It's, why did we lose that deal? Because when you start understanding why you're losing deals, and if we as RevOps can bring that back into marketing teams, you can actually start designing your top of funnel like content and all those sort of like communications to address those issues top of funnel. So
Yeah.
you see, we're really about like, how do we bring the data, technology and processes and help each department? I hope that helps a little bit, Stefan. Of course, there's lots of other projects and I can talk about many.
It definitely does, and it's almost like you're somebody picturing this like confession setup where like sales talk about their confessions and marketing talking about their confessions, and then you're the, I don't know, psychologist in the middle that has to kind of put all these thoughts together and then bring out a system out of them.
Yeah, and I think with that, like what you'd have in a marketing team and a sales team, you have different types of RevOps people. You have the people who become the translators. We call them usually solution architects or strategists, who will listen, who will consolidate all those thoughts from many different groups and solutionize, like, what is the best solution that will help everybody, ideally with the quickest return on investment. That takes a level of experience. And then you have the builders. So if you think about your marketing managers or your copywriters or people who do the day-to-day building, you have that in RevOps as well. And I suppose one of the mistakes I see now is people think of RevOps as one person. If I was to tell you a marketing team should only ever be one person, or a sales
Hmm.
team should only ever be one person, we'd really struggle. We need different types of people within our RevOps function.
I've never. I'm probably guilty of that as well, Natalie. That you actually need those, like both the builders and the thinkers. That's a good way to express it. Is there some kind of typical maturity curve you experience with companies as well? Kind of from when they're, let's say, below the 50 to as you kind of grow towards 100 and then 500 and 1,000. Kind of, how does companies typically have like how does the typical maturity curve look for RevOps?
Yeah, so this really depends on where you live. There's a massive regional difference between how organizations operate. I think mostly it's talked about today, whether this is right, but it's talked about in a sales rep to human ratio. So once you've got like over 5 reps, they do recommend that you putting in your first hire, because the thing is that if your reps can't be productive enough or don't have a process at all, then you're basically paying for 5 heads that aren't being productive. So you bring in that RevOps person to enable them to be more productive. So, I mean, it depends on your motions, really. I would say if you're going to the time in which you at least implement a CRM, even having a fractional solution would be helpful. I mean, that's one of the things that we're really keen on is supporting teams with even a fractional resource, whether it be a day, a month, or something like that, to at least start to educate to make sure we don't have a massive amount of technical debt. Because
Yeah.
what then happens is if we and you'll probably have all experienced this, you're working, you're focused on your job, you're not really thinking about cleaning up data behind you because that's not really your job.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
trying to like build out what you need on these technologies, and before you know it, you're 3 to 4 years in with a CRM or a marketing tool, and you're like, I have no idea what this workflow does, and why is this attribution overwriting this attribution,
Yeah.
and why when I do this report is this data not right? Well, unfortunately, if you haven't built a data strategy on before you implement a CRM, your reports probably won't ever read quite right. So I'd say, partner with a external provider or a partner who's expert, have fractional support if you're smaller, to move from that 5 to 10 to onwards reps, start hiring. And I think what we've said is like maybe one person can manage up to about 10 reps, and then you're going to need to start thinking about having a more strategic head and then a couple of builders. But there is so many different schools of thinking of how to do this, but I'd say the earlier the better. We've just had a business come to us who have just raised their Series B, and they were honest in saying they'd spoken to 4 different partners, and every quote to fix their system was far above what they expected because it's fixing the technical debt. So
Okay.
it's just bearing in mind, if you wait too long, the actual fixing of the technical debt is going to cost more than what it would have been to start earlier.
That's interesting, but it definitely resonates with me that when we had just a few salespeople, wasn't really a problem because you could just kind of talk over the desk and get things resolved. But I don't know what the sales and post-sales team is now, but it's like 30 or 40 people. And then it really matters whether you can, can you just find these incremental improvements once a month or once a week or something like that? Then the whole team constantly gets more efficient.
I mean, there's a crazy thing as well. Like, if your best reps feel like they're being treated unfairly, they'll just leave. Like, we've seen that before. If they feel like they're not being routed leads, like, fairly, if they feel like their quality of leads that they're getting isn't as good as somebody else's, they'll say, I'll move somewhere else that's got a better infrastructure. We've heard as well from CROs where they've hired reps from really reputable companies into their
Yeah.
business, and the reps have gone, this technology won't help. This infrastructure won't help me sell. Bye. Because more and more today, top performers are rating technology. I know marketers who refuse to work on certain platforms because they know that it's going to reduce their productivity.
Yeah.
And if you come in and you see data is wrecked, and suddenly as a marketer, you're under pressure to deliver a conversion metric across all your life cycle stages, and you're like, well, these life cycle stages make no sense to the business.
Yeah.
People
Very,
leave.
very, it makes a lot of sense, Natalie. I think we should almost do we should do like let's try to do like a before and after AI like milestone. So before like these last years in terms of AI, what were typically the places where you could kind of help companies find efficiency or like unlock potential that they hadn't really kind of optimized or like relieved? What would be kind of your typical go-tos like pre-AI to help your customers?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just thinking it's hard because I'm gonna have to take my mindset back to 2 years ago when I was thinking pre-AI. Okay. So I mean,
Or maybe there's some kind of evergreen problem
yeah. So I
areas
mean,
that
we would always work through what we call the bow tie
Okay.
revenue
Yeah.
model, which for those of you who aren't aware of, what happens you've seen funnels that go like this. You got to
Yeah.
imagine the bow tie goes like this. And on this side, you've got your top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, opportunity, pipeline. And in the middle, you've got the committed customer. Then the
Yeah.
other side, you've got onboarding, seen first value, reoccurring revenue, net revenue retention,
Yes.
and growth. Yeah. So that's the model. So what we'd be looking at is projects all the way along that to create value within that company. So it starts with understanding like what is the issue. Speed to lead is always a massive one, which is, how quickly are your reps actually getting the leads and notifying on like how urgent they are based on their score. So lead scoring, all of that, because the best way to improve productivity within your sales team is or performance is to improve their focus on things that are going to close the fastest with the largest, deal value. So, you want to fill their capacity with stuff that is of the greatest value. So that was always something that we would focus a lot on.
But then maybe let's just stay there a little bit, because I think that is a super duper important topic for us as marketers, because if the sales team doesn't sell anything, there's no marketing ROI.
Yeah.
So as a marketer, it's not enough to care about the creative. It's not enough to care about the text. It's not enough to just care about your website. You need to study what actually happens to a lead all the way through the sales team's handling of that lead. Because if they don't follow up on the leads that you create, or if they don't care about them, there is no marketing ROI.
Yeah. I mean, I would even go one step further of if we're able to get better information. I mean, I am jumping a little bit into the AI side here a little bit, but if we're able to get better intelligence from the calls of the sales reps into the funnel, and we're able to highlight objections, what's to stop us marketing in funnel to manage those objections in performance marketing? Let's say, for example, someone says on a call to a sales rep, "Oh, I just don't understand the value in X." Okay. Then if you could pull that was an objection into your system and then have an ad that addressed that and make sure it was in front of that person using the audience feature, the rep doesn't even have to be there. You as marketing can be there to then influence throughout that pipeline journey. And I think that this idea that we hand over things from marketing to sales, I don't even necessarily agree that it's a handover point. I feel like it becomes a multi-channel collaboration point, in which at that point that it becomes pipeline, you now have marketing content and sales one-to-one that should be working together throughout that process.
That is a really good advice, Natalie. And I think many benchmarks amongst that, our own, also said that like the group of stakeholders that are involved in deals are now also getting larger, because every piece of technology is being scrutinized for, do we really need this at the moment? And one of the reactions we have at least done at Dream is to actually, we normally stay pretty focused on the marketer as we kind of try to pull them in. But as a deal is created in our sales pipeline, we try to expand the group of people in that company that receives our ads, because we know a lot of people are going to be looking at this decision whether you should buy our product or not. So by really caring about not just whether they convert, but what happens afterwards, is a big marketing opportunity.
And this is the thing, because I've been speaking to a lot of marketers about moving into this ABM model, because marketers are in different levels of maturity in terms of like whether they're doing direct to individuals or looking at account-based marketing. And like one of the things that I've seen marketers struggle with is actually being able to report on the performance. There is a new way of, when you move into ABM, this idea of reporting on life cycle stages on contact level, we need to switch from that. We need to be looking at reporting on life cycle stages and account penetration on a company level, because I'm seeing this real breakup between the way marketers report and the way sales report. And it's very difficult to tell the story, because sales are all talking about accounts and marketing teams to be talking about contacts and number of MQLs. So we've been rethinking how we do this in terms of like understanding when a company becomes an MQL, like because you have at least one, you might even say like to become an MQL, we need to have at least 2 stakeholders that are engaged, for example. Yeah. And then you might say, okay, well, what's the level of penetration within that MQL that marketing has managed to achieve? It's just like, so then you can tell the same story that the sales team is saying as well. And another thing that we've been doing is to help sales is when there is another contact that is engaged and becomes an MQL at that account, is actually sometimes, not always, depending on the business, is automatically associating them with the deal or opportunity, depending on if you're a HubSpot or a Salesforce business, and then alerting the team, have you got in contact with this person? Because you're multi-threading, they're engaging with our stuff as well. Because you're right, Stefan, I think the numbers have gone from, there was a state of sales report that came out at the beginning of this year, I think, and it mentioned that the number of decision makers has raised from like something like an average of 8 to like an average of 13 or 15 people that are needed to make a decision now.
I think ours said like from 7
7
to 10 or something like that. But like the trend is clear that more people are getting involved. And Natalie, I'm curious, do you still, maybe I've been living in this ABM bubble too long, but do you still see that the sales team is focused on the account and the marketing team celebrates the leads, or there's no kind of understanding?
It was literally just last week, which I was talking to a marketer and I suddenly realized that they were doing ABM thinking, but contact reporting. And they were struggling to understand why they couldn't tell the story. So a lot of the job of what RevOps does becomes education, becomes like, sometimes I don't feel marketers are valued enough when they are sitting in board meetings. And more often than not, they're not telling the story the same way that lines up with the way that sales are telling the story. And it's that disconnection which breaks trust within that kind of senior executive. So unfortunately, because sales is often like focused on the revenue at the end, they often get celebrated. So rather than fighting against that, we need to look at this like clear reporting metric that flows throughout the whole thing, because we have to align with what leadership trusts. Now, I'm not saying sales reports are always right. They're often not, especially with AI and this idea that you can literally connect a Claude or a GPT to your CRM and you can ask it, who's my best salesperson? And leaders are doing this, and they're getting some awful data back. So there's pros and cons to it.
So there's, let's call it follow the lead. It's probably a very good way to find efficiency. Are there other kind of classical areas where you can go in and squeeze more efficiency out of people's go-to-market?
There is so many. I could probably sit here for about 4 hours to talk about all the different things. If anyone is interested, there's a really great book on what's called value creation for PE firms, which talks about how you break down different parts of the funnel. And I'll find the link to it and share it with you, Stefan. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. But I read it and I really like the way in which they model value creation. You look at the metric you're trying to move, you look at the part of the department or the business that you're trying to change that in, and then you drill down into the project level of the project you're going to change it. And RevOps very much thinks like that. So I would then be looking at like pipeline and pipeline conversion rates. And to be honest, what we would do is we put the reporting in first and we'd look at where the conversions are dropping down. And that's where we would build a project in. So part of revenue operations is sales enablement. And it might be that they don't have what's called a discovery methodology or a way of actually qualifying what is truly qualified. So a lot of sales teams end up spending their capacity on deals that we're never going to close because they just they don't want to lose revenue. But ironically, if you spend your time and effort on people who are never going to buy, don't have the budget, don't have the authority, you're actually just wasting your time, which you could be using generating more pipeline yourself. So we do analysis like this because it then means that the qualified revenue per head on the sales rep goes up because we free them from all the busy deals that we're never going to convert. So like, we use methodologies. You're welcome to look them up if you don't know them. Things like MEDPIC. BANT we're not using so much. It's a bit too basic. We've got Spiced as well, which is created by Winning by Design. We do like that one as well. But MEDPIC and Spiced are our two main ones that we try and help teach and enable. And we build those into the pipeline. Another one is just general sales admin. I'm just like...
Sounds super basic,
They hate it.
Yeah.
there are actually great tools that you can take recordings from calls and you can leverage the AI either built within that tool or use Claude yourself, or because we have Claude connected to our CRM. And I say, look up the call in which this was a discovery with this person, take the transcript, put it into MedPick, put that into our CRM, say the date that it happened, reference that you, AI, created this, because I want to know what was created by AI and what was created by a human in my instance, because people who aren't differentiating by that, you're going to have trouble in the future. And then it then appends it above. So every meeting, it adds more and more context
I
to
see.
that
Yeah.
automatically. The sales rep has to write nothing. We use call intelligence to do that. And then we can actually run deal probability and forecasting based on call intelligence.
Yeah, that's very
So,
handy.
and that improves forecasting. I mean, there's so much we can do when it comes to intelligence from actual meetings with prospects. And for marketers, having those transcripts and those actual things in the CRM is gold, because then
Yeah.
you can do proper deal loss analysis and improve the way in which you're marketing, and
Yeah.
therefore get more pipeline in that's qualified.
There's definitely some, let's kind of call it timely words here. So I know the like MedPicks and bends, but how does that relate to something like lead scoring, which is probably a little bit a step earlier than this, or like intent scoring, engagement scoring? Is it all part of the same, or how do you kind of view it, Natalie?
Okay, so when you're doing
Sorry.
sorry, I'm like, you're really going deep here, Stefan.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about like intent scoring and lead scoring, these are things you do without speaking to a human.
Got it.
Okay, so this is what I call like pre-lead, like enrichment. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is what will help your reps go out to understand if there is a true opportunity, because you want them to be focusing on the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
lead scoring is bringing them lowest hanging fruit. But you can't guarantee, and I think this is a thing as well, and maybe this is where education needs to be, is marketers' job is to bring the lowest hanging fruit to optimize the capacity of what sales reps prospect and go after.
Got it.
Marketing's job, apart from, of course, through website, in inbound inquiries, different. So create these sort of like MQLs aren't necessarily, well, if we're even using MQLs, I feel that's another whole nother topic. But these people who are showing some engagement, some intent, some knowledge of the brand, you're giving them low hanging fruit. Okay. It's much easier than sales teams creating their own cold lists and going after cold stuff. Okay. But you're also bringing them the inbound, the hand raisers, and you're scoring them as well. So
Yeah.
what you want to be doing is, of course, anyone who has intent markers and they've raised their hand, you put a top priority list for a salesperson. And then you've got these other warm things that you can say, look, this stuff is also high intent. If you're going to do outbound prospecting, we would highly recommend engaging with these because they know our brand, they've engaged with us. But you're going to have a different messaging for both of those, we hope, or you're educating sales teams to go after them differently. But once they get them in that call,
Yeah.
they need to actually diagnose if they are qualified. Now, if you have got an account that matches your, matches your size, matches your revenue figure, you've got like a job title that you think is right, and they come inbound, but a salesperson comes onto a call and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just doing some like fact finding because like we're thinking about this sometime next year. Well, there's no critical event or
No.
timeline or decision. So that would be disqualified based on the critical event or timeline. But we would look at putting in a close lost to nurture rather than a close lost time waster. You might have someone from a business that you thought was in your right thing, and they come in and the salesperson's like, hang on a second, they're fact finding because they're actually a sneaky competitor. They're trying to do this for themselves. And you might want to close lost them as disqualified, do not contact. So
Yeah,
you don't really know why someone is contacting you until you get face to face with them. So
absolutely.
that's why the reps need to understand what do they want to be focusing on, because ultimately they've got to hit their either end of month or end of quarter targets, and they want to be putting their energy, because each one of us humans only has so much we can give, into those things that are most likely to close and have the greatest average account contract value.
I think that is like a great explanation for why, like, if you're a marketer, you need to, well, both if you're a marketer or if you're in sales, in terms of the customer journey, the marketer needs to look beyond their own realm and see what happens. But sales also needs to be feeding back that information of what is actually being picked up as we talk with all these prospects that you bring in, and help marketing learn from the intelligence that is gathered there.
Yeah, and the thing is, the question is, does that need to be either of those teams, or does that need to be RevOps? Because
That's probably what you call RevOps.
yeah,
And
because
then,
I
yeah,
think this expectation that after a deal closes, that a sales team is gonna then spend an hour or 2 running through all their counts and why they closed with you, because they're not interested in that. All they're interested in is, how do I create my next pipeline so I can close my deals?
yeah.
However, if you have a RevOps function who's been collecting call intelligence, who's been putting that in and set up a proper close loss function, you could ask your RevOps function to jump on a call with you and say, could you talk to me about the last month and why we lost deals, and what are the common trends or themes that we
Mm.
can perhaps stress in our marketing materials, or what didn't work and what did work, so then we can then use that. So yeah, and you can use, say, like, the idea of like the pain points, and because if you have a proper sales methodology put in,
Yeah.
it's so much easier for marketers to understand, what is the pain, what is the impact they're looking for. And we even using some of this information to product, because if one of the close loss features was that lacks functionality, which functions did it lack? What does product need to develop? Because actually, that's what's going to help us win. So
Yeah.
having that intelligence on the deal pipeline is so critical for growth.
Yeah, I agree. Wonderful, Natalie. Let's try then to, like, draw a line in the sand here. And if we look towards the promise of what we call this episode, scaling revenue without headcount, I'm quite sure a lot of this is about what's happening with technology at the moment, where all these things are like converging into AI products, and these AI products can have agents that automate a lot of different stuff. But maybe if you maybe you can start by describing kind of how you're seeing the technology stack in this AI turmoil right now, and yeah, how do we help companies go from, oh, this fantastic potential of AI into actually creating revenue, actually creating value, scaling without a headcount?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna add a slight caveat about the idea of scaling without headcount. We will, I believe, still need headcount for the foreseeable future, at the minute, but it's scaling without headcount at the same rate. Perhaps as we wanted to grow, like if you wanted to 5x your revenue, you would add 5 more or however many X sales heads, or you'd add a marketing person. What we're seeing is that that's not the expectation now. You've got that kind of foundational level of people, and it's like, how do we grow with what we have right now? And to be honest, AI is not always the first thing that you just need to look at. Those things that I said you can optimize, which don't necessarily require AI, although the conversational intelligence stuff does. You will need AI for that. But all of those other things, you can look at just starting to automate things. And I would say we're kind of like, it's just that next level of automation to me. It's like, well, we need to understand what works, the manual processes. And once you've got what works manually, you can start to automate that. And then you can automate it at scale with AI. But if you haven't mastered going from manual to automation, adding on the layer of AI is not necessarily going to help that process. So we got to be, I'm seeing a lot of people jump from like seeing AI as just another tool they can add to their stack.
Mm.
We still have to go back to that, like, what works and understanding why it works. Does it work because there's a human there? Or does it work because we found that process that when we repeat, it works? If it works because a relationship with a human is there, that's not something we're going to want to consider. It's a high value human touch point. So we're like, how can we release more people to do that touch point? So then we look across and we say, okay, well, what are the processes that are happening along that journey, which humans touch that they don't really need to? So for example, proposal creation, like if you bring there's a whole like deal desk functions within some businesses that like put together proposals and understand all of that. Well, if you have all of that intelligence within your CRM from the calls, then actually you can run that through a agent and a template that you already have created for a proposal that you already know that works. And it can automatically populate that. I mean, people are spending half a day, a full day on creating these bespoke because they say every client needs a different proposal, especially in the services business, maybe not so much in the product, but they still need different product lines and they maybe wants different terms in contracts and this and that. But a human doesn't need to do the creation of that document. It needs to verify. And I think we all need to, at the minute where we are, is we want our AI to be saving us time.
Yeah.
It can do better than automation because, I mean, we used to do it where you get the intelligence and you'd fit it in a proposal and you'd have that really gross kind of like looking insert language. Whereas today it can build the whole thing completely bespoke. So it's kind of that next level of automation. But if you don't have the processes to apply AI to, it's not going to make it better. We've all seen this like massive like influx of AI created outbound content.
Yeah.
Which
And it's so clear that when they land in the inbox that this is not a human who've been sitting and writing me this. So I'll click spam on this.
yeah. So if you it's like it's like that saying, I think it was I can't remember who said it, but if you add automation to a process that doesn't work, or Bill Gates it was Bill Gates who said, if you add automation to a process that doesn't work, you 10x the problem.
Yeah.
So imagine, I would say, if we're adding AI to a process that doesn't work, we're 100xing the problem. So, you've then got problems at scale.
That's funny.
Rather than like profits at scale.
But
so
I think you did
yeah.
like your example of, did you call it proposal writing? Yeah, like I think that's probably a very good approach to write down the jobs that are to be done every day or every week, or like where are your reps or your marketing team spending a lot of time, and then try to think about, do we have the context that we need to actually make a more efficient process than what you sit with today?
Yeah, exactly. So for that, you'll then need to work backwards. So what I like to, especially I like working with marketers because they're like super creative, is you go like, this is my dream, like this is the end, and this is what I want to see. We then have to reverse engineer what that looks like. So let's say, for example, I want an account fully enriched with all of the information about this account. I want to know when was their last fundraise. I want to know who's in that account. I want all the buying groups and all of that stuff just automatically in my CRM. Okay, great. Let's reverse engineer that. What does that mean? And we start looking at, okay, well, what are the metrics that matter to be on those accounts? And where do we find them from? Because I'm sorry, just pulling them in from any one data source is not necessarily going to be able to validate that. So what we've started doing is we've started saying, okay, well, where would this data live? Because, there are like government websites with this information that we can scrape. There's actual sources we can go and find and we can enrich. We can also add things like enriched on this date by which source. So then if there's things that are starting to come up that we're like, we don't trust this point, we're like, okay, we're seeing consistently that this data provider, it's coming up low trust by our team. Okay, then we can switch that out. It's not a case of just like putting something in and then like it's 100% right. Then we can look at, okay, well, we want to add people that work there. Okay, well, that's maybe going to be, we're going to need either a Clay, or we're going to need to API into LinkedIn, or we're going to need to use something else to then pull those people in. And then based on their job title, we're going to need to mark what we think their buyer like profile was going to be. But that is a lot of like work to figure out. But that's why we have RevOps, because we're the geeky techie people who can turn like your dreams
Yeah.
into a reality. But it does take time. It's not just AI fixes things, because RevOps is now becoming the business to prompt, like becoming the department that writes the prompts for the AI.
Yeah.
But to write the prompts, we still need to know like what matters. And it's very much like engineering, just without necessarily needing code. We still
Yeah.
have to do that engineering process stuff. So I think I'm seeing a bit of a disjoint between what people's expectations are of what AI can achieve without any effort. You still have to put effort in to
Yeah.
make AI deliver your competitive advantage.
Yeah. I think there's all of us on media kind of getting to the end of this honeymoon phase of of AI, where we just think it's gonna fix everything, and people are starting to ask questions. Wait a minute, this is not just a gimmick. I need to actually like get concrete value out of playing around with these things.
So I find the best, and this is how I started looking at it, even within my own company. So I can talk about it through a couple of different lenses. I can talk about what we've seen works for our clients, but I can
Yeah.
also talk about what's working for me as a
Yeah.
founder CEO, because we started up like an AI steering group, and
An
I'm
AI steering group.
yes, we have an
What's
AI
that?
steering group within our company. They meet twice a week and they talk about what value that we can deliver with not only internally but for our clients, leveraging AI. And
Are these
yeah,
AI agents, or are these people?
no, these are people. These are
These
people
are
for
people.
now.
Okay, good,
But
good,
I
good,
mean,
good.
there is a lot to be said for bringing AI to your meetings. I mean, we could talk all about like how we view AI. And if you want AI to be able to make decisions like you have to bring it everywhere with you. I mean, we do record every single one of our calls. I mean, I'm probably going to take this and take the transcript and do
Yeah.
something with it afterwards. But so we have an AI steering group, but also I have found people in my business that are natural builders. And I'm kind of running a secret experiment. Well, not very secret because now I'm talking about it now, where I'm looking at the productivity between the steering group and between the people in which I am setting specific things. And I kind of want to see where the productivity comes in terms of our ability to create value. I would say if you are thinking about either one of those methods, start with you've got a department, you want to pick a process, and then you want to find the smallest change within that process that you can use AI on. Because if you make tiny little changes, what that will do is that will improve that process. And once that process is improved, you then do the same method on the next one. And then it's the cumulative
Yeah.
effect of improving all of those. People are trying to boil the ocean with AI.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of people being like, oh, let's just build a sales enablement platform with AI. And I'm like, is that even what sales will use? We
I think
need to be thinking like product people.
that's so good advice, Natalie. I was just about to ask you kind of what is the tangible way here to go about, but I so much agree with you. Instead of trying to make this boil the ocean approach and just fix everything at once with AI, like single out the things
Yeah.
that are most ripe for it first, and then
Yeah.
get it working there.
I can give you one very specific, I mean, this is not to do with marketing and sales. This is actually a financial operations
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I can give you a very, very specific way in which I found a tiny little process within our business
Yeah.
that I'm going to build it myself actually on this one. So I spoke to our accounts administrator who does a lot of she works with our bookkeeping company, and she has been submitting bookkeeping a little later than we'd hoped every month. And I don't think that's a her problem. I actually
No.
think it's a me problem, because
Okay.
as a business owner, I am required to provide all my receipts for everything. And for those of you who have lots of receipts, you'll know how laborious that is.
Yeah.
Of course, you can use tools like Dext, but you still have to take that human action of either forwarding something to Dext or sending it to Dext. A human has to do that.
Yeah.
So I spoke to her and I said, okay, which account are we having? Okay, she's got like maybe 25 different business accounts because we do lots of trading across the world and things like that. And I was like, okay, out of these 25, which is the biggest issue? And she told me one specific account that has the most transactions on it. Okay, right. Within that, is there a specific person that is the biggest culprit of not sending you information? And she says, yes, Natalie, it is you. I was like, okay, great. So
Great.
what I can do then is and I said, how do you know this? And she says, well, on our zero, we can see lots of red next to these transactions, which means that there's no receipt that corresponds with it.
Mm.
I said, okay, so our baseline measure, so we start with a baseline. Our baseline measure is the number of reds on zero. Okay, we've identified that the biggest problem is me, and I don't have that much time. So what I'm going to do is I will build an agent that can go through my emails, that can look in, that can identify based on the information in zero, what it's looking for. It will then find a receipt and it will automatically push that to Dext. And our measure of success will be an 80% decrease in reds. She said, yes, great. But do you see how I actually come up with a return on investment? It's like qualification. We have a baseline. We know what we want the outcome to be. We know how we're going to validate the outcome. And then we're actually able to build something that is directly tied with a quantifiable outcome. And the final ROI will be that hopefully we'll see a improvement in the timeliness of our bookkeeping. Now, we might not see that through that one iteration, but if we then go to the next account that's a problem or the next person that's a problem, after doing that 3 times, she might hit her target every month. And then that is a serious impact for the business
Yeah.
because we were thinking of hiring her an assistant,
Yeah.
which would have been headcount. But
Yeah.
can we do it without that? I hope that's a really
That's
strict way of showing.
nice and simple example of how you can kind of find things and make them much more efficient. Okay, Natalie, as we kind of look towards the end of this conversation, I'd love to hear kind of some predictions of how you think this is gonna unfold within, let's not say 5 years, but more like a 6 to 12 months time frame. What are the
Okay.
next kind of AI or scaling without headcount things that you think will appear into your work, the work that you guys have to help people do?
Yeah. I think the gaps between competitive advantages of businesses is going to get wider, just wider. Every time we have an innovation, those businesses who have invested in their data infrastructure, perhaps they even have a data warehouse, they're looking after that, they're just going to be able to move so much faster with this idea of implementing AI infrastructure. I am expecting to see, and in fact, we might even start doing more of it, is bringing AI into calls and talking to AI and letting AI have an opinion within our calls, treating it as a human. Because ultimately, if you want your AI agents to think like a human, to have the guardrails like a human, they need to listen to those conversations. You know, when you have a developer who suggests that, I don't know, you pull data from here and you're like, no, that's not GDPR compliant. You need your agent to hear that, because then here's your guardrails for you. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of people if we want AI to act more human, we need to treat it more human. So I think I'm going to start to see that. I'm already seeing it with a few kind of innovators over in the US, which I find really interesting.
I think that some of what you're saying is like we need to double down and give AI the context of what's going on there, because that's one of the annoying things I have when I try to kind of spar with Claude or whatever it is, that it gives me an answer, but it misses this context or it misses this context. So I need to be willing to allow the AI and to record kind of all my professional conversations in order for it to help me accelerate.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, the only reason I'm using ChatGPT and Claude, both of them, because I'm one of those experimental people. But
Yeah.
because I've been talking to ChatGPT for 2 years now, or
Yeah.
maybe not that long, I can't. Time seems to fly. I don't even know what time length we have anymore. But yeah, probably for 2 years, actually. Yeah. And I've been sharing with it my thoughts and my visions, and I've been talking to it like it's my fellow CEO. And, I remember being in Germany and being at a conference and just walking down the street talking to it about my talk and what it thinks I should talk. And then I would criticize it and I say, no, I don't think that. And the more and more I've talked to it now, when I have conversations with it, it does remind me of what I thought, and ask me if that's what I really mean. So
Yeah.
it has that context of my way of thinking.
Yeah.
So I do find myself naturally gravitating towards that. However, I do use Claude a lot more for the data analysis and things within HubSpot CRMs and
Mm.
Salesforce CRMs, because it just seems to have a more logical way of thinking like that. It's also better for visuals than I've found ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
I'm keeping both of them at the same time. But yeah, right now I am just at that point where we're trying to record everything. And then we are planning on giving that entire context layer to our AI. And I think this is the thing. It's like building up that context layer. HubSpot and Yamini from HubSpot are talking very much about building a context layer, because you can't expect AI to come to a conclusion of what you should do next if you don't provide it with that context.
Mm. That's
And
very interesting.
you need to provide it with that global context. We've got one client who's actually been using AI for performance marketing over a year because they use it across their data warehouse. I think they have several different Salesforce instances, several different HubSpot instances, all feeding information into a data warehouse. I think it's Google BigQuery, but there are others in the market, Snowflake, Redshift, all those kind of things. But because at the PE level, they're able to tap into that warehouse, they've got a massive context layer. So I think these buildings of context layers are going to become more popular with the
Yeah.
forward-thinking businesses. And I
Huh.
think, fortunately, we're going to see a massive gap with the laggards, because the adopters
Absolutely.
versus the laggards is just going to get wider.
That's very. I think you're completely right, Natalie. But it's also like partly scary, partly encouraging. I think a lot of us who've been using AI the last 2 years have kind of hit like a plateau. Now we're using it to kind of give us some feedback. We're using it to kind of correct some tasks. Maybe we're connecting some, make images and so forth. But it's not really doing that forward thinking of knowing everything you're thinking about, and then what are kind of the best kind of 1 to 3 options you can do from here, given everything you're into.
Yeah.
So that might be a way to break my AI plateau, is to give it a
Yeah.
lot more context.
I need to give you, Stefan, my AI hierarchy of needs. We're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've created with my friend Shannon over in the US.
Huh.
Again, I think this is about a year and a half ago. We talked about the AI hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom, you have individual productivity. That's the bottom layer. That's the most basic layer. You can make yourself more productive by using a bit of AI. Then we've got team level productivity, of which the context layer, again, doesn't need to be massive. You can give it context as you go and become more productive as a team. But
Mm.
start to come into like the intelligence layers, like the analytic layers, to be able to actually help you make decisions. And then you have the next layer in which it makes decisions for you, but you need to have built up context. And finally,
Yeah,
we have AI autonomy, where not
yeah,
only AI can work on its own, but it
yeah,
can work with other agents who all share different contexts. Because if you think about it, if you had an AI and I had an AI and we got them to talk, they would debate, because it would talk about my guardrails versus your guardrails.
yeah.
And then maybe it would ideate based on our different values and thinking and guardrails.
Yeah, and the only way you can trust it is that you've fed it enough context to really truly understand who you are. I get that's true.
But then, I mean, then we open up a
Yeah.
bigger question of like, when can you trust a human opinion? So that's going to be like, because remember, like when the internet first launched, we had this kind of thing of like people trusted humans more than they did anything they read on the internet. And
Mm.
now, as we look at the trends through the ages, people trust more what they read on the internet than they do hearing from their friend.
Yeah.
So, and who knows what the future might bring for AI, but that's wild.
At least now we have the recording, Natalie, and we can take it up a couple of years from now to see how spot on you were. Natalie, thank you so much for taking the time to educate me and the people listening in. If they want to hear more from what you do, what is kind of the path you want to send them on to continue to follow you?
Yeah, I mean, I express a lot of my thoughts and feelings about everything on LinkedIn. So if you like learning about revenue operations, if you want to learn more about optimizing HubSpot Salesforce, if you want to learn my thoughts on AI, if you like puppies, then also LinkedIn is a great place. I have a lovely Labrador that I occasionally post. And then other than that, I mean, if you want more help or if you've got a project that you're interested in, RevOpsAutomated.com, you can book a meeting with us. We are providing like complimentary strategy calls. We do some process mapping in that kind of pre-sales journey. And then who knows, we might collaborate.
Fantastic, Natalie. Thank you so much. And everybody who's listening, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and Natalie. And if you've liked what you've heard or you strongly disagree, go in and comment or subscribe or share. We'd appreciate all of it. Thank you so much for your time today, Natalie, and have a great day ahead.
Thanks, Stefan.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.